Coming up, if you think you're not a musician, I have someone's going to bring out the musician within you. Barbara, you have a fantastic background. You're not just a musician, you're a writer, you're an editor, you've done history classes, and everything comes together in your classes at Tri-C Encore to do this. Tell me a little bit about your classes.
Well, I think I like to be sure that students understand that different periods of music history did not occur in a vacuum. So I try to explain to them what the context is, particularly with classical music.
Okay, so let's take somebody famous like Mozart.
Okay.
And you and I both know that that's the technical classical era. Bach was Baroque. Beethoven brings in the Romantic era, right? All of these different things. So what was going on in, say, the time of Beethoven that influenced his music? What world events were influencing his music?
Well, I think Beethoven is an interesting person to choose because unlike a lot of the other composers, he lived a lot longer and really straddled the period between classical and Romantic. And gradually, the music evolved from one period to the other. And I think that reflected what was going on at the time.
He had a lot to do with sort of bringing in what we think of as Romantic era music.
Definitely.
And I know like the average listener, they just go, oh, I like that or I don't like that or whatever, but they'll, right? There's certain elements or certain things that we have to say, oh, this is what makes it Romantic. This is what makes it classical. This is what makes it Baroque or 20th century or anything like that. But like, when you think about the early 1800s, Europe was plunged into war, the
right.
Napoleonic Wars, and I've always, I don't know how historically accurate this is, but I've always looked at things like dun 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 dun, right? It's kind of like
canonic.
Wow. Right. It's the anger, it's the aggression, it's the frustration of the era that there's right. I don't know if he had Napoleon in mind when he was writing that, but is that some of the things that you...
Exactly. That's precisely. I actually did a class, there was a history class on the Renaissance, where we brought in every element of life, including music. And music was just a component of it, where I delved into what did people wear from the different classes? What did they eat? What did they do for a living? Just the whole process of people evolving from a more agrarian society to moving to the cities, and how did that affect their day-to-day life? So I think incorporating some of that into the classes helps people to understand more what the music is saying.
That's awesome. When it comes to people who are not musicians, you have this background in classical music. You're a well-trained musician. You were even on the local Cleveland is very unique that they still have a functioning classical music radio
yes.
station. And you were even part of that for a while. Mm-hmm. And how do you teach senior citizens who maybe don't have any background in music? They were an accountant or a homemaker or whatever, and now they're retired or the kids are out of the nest or whatever, and they're looking. How do you work with them for that?
I think the best approach is to just have them listen and talk about what are they hearing. I like to do courses on musical instruments, for example, where we talk about the different families of the instruments so they become more familiarized with the different types of instruments. When you're listening to orchestral music, for example, it would be nice if my students could differentiate between a clarinet and a violin, for example. And so we go through it family by family, instrument by instrument. And I think that helps them to put the whole thing in context.
Is it fair to say that, right, if we start using some technical jargon, a tonal palette, which that's a lot of syllables to say, what is the sound that this is making? But is it fair to say that trumpets have, or brass in general, have evoke certain emotions or are better at evoking emotions than woodwinds like an oboe or a clarinet? Or
Yeah, we definitely do talk about the effects of different families of instruments on our impressions. What gravitates? How do we gravitate to the different types of sounds? What differentiates one type of family from another is what we call tone color. Another word for that is timbre. They use the French word. And that tells you, when you listen to a violin versus a trumpet, if they're playing the same note, you'll be able to tell the difference.
So if we go back to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, iconic dun 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 dun, if flutes were going tweet 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 tweet, right, it doesn't have the same emotional impact.
I think some of the great composers understood orchestration and what kind of effect they could get from different types of instruments. Sometimes they would combine certain instruments to create a specific sound. In our modern day, I'd like to talk about Howard Shore, the composer who wrote all of the music for the Lord of the Rings series and the Hobbit movies, one of our great living composers. And I think he just seemed to capture that exact spirit, to know just what instruments to use and in what context and how to create a specific feel for the audience given the scene. And there was so much strong emotion in those movies, and he just nailed it. He really understood how to do that.
And that shows a really interesting facet of music. Before movies, audiences would go out to hear Beethoven or Mozart or whoever it was. I don't know why I'm stuck on those three guys, but they're
They're famous.
Vivaldi wrote stuff too.
I'm sure he'd be happy to hear you say that.
But people were going out to listen to the music. Somebody like Howard Shore or John Williams or whatever, right? The modern composers of orchestral music are writing music that supports a movie, that's there for a story. Now, you may be able to sit down and listen to that music all by itself, and it's wonderful and beautiful. And if you don't know that this music was from Lord of the Rings or something, and you're just listening to it, it might give you different impressions in your own. You close your eyes and you listen and you see different things. But if you've seen the movie and you go, it pulls those images of orcs or wizards or hobbits or whatever, all coming into those things. And the instruments that they use, the melody that they play, the orchestration, something called the counterpoint behind it,
the rhythms too,
is all there to evoke, well, these are our bad people and these are our heroes and these are just the other day, I was listening to, I had my streaming service on random, and Driving Miss Daisy came up.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And that was I can't think of the guy's name right now.
I don't recall either.
He's still composing music. But what was that? That was an Odd Couple film. It was an old Jewish lady and a middle-aged black man, and they were thrown together by fate or circumstance or whatever. And the music starts with a clarinet all by itself. And it's not really klezmer-esque, but it just Yiddish enough to give us that flavor and it's standing on its own, and it's telling us that the part played, Miss Daisy, played by Jessica Tandy, I can remember her name. I can't. Hans Zimmer was the composer. Yes. She's headstrong. She's all by herself, and then we could maybe say the Morgan Freeman's character is represented by this blues piano that comes underneath and supports her efforts. But sometimes the clarinet is playing by itself, which sort of defines for us the relationship those two characters had. And so really good film composers will take all of this into account in supporting their. And so is this the things that you guys talk about in your classes?
We do, actually. I think sometimes movie music does not necessarily reflect the movie itself. It can stand alone. And sometimes you have to have the music. And it really varies from one piece to another. But to be an excellent movie composer, you really need to understand the film and to know exactly what instruments, when to use what rhythms. There's just so many different elements that come together to make a good movie film.
That's awesome. Now, that's right. That helps people understand. Right? Maybe you're a fan of movies, maybe you're a fan of music, but when you're helping these non-musicians to understand how all of this is coming together, they're seeing it in a new light. How do you get people who have musical backgrounds? What do you do to introduce them to them participating in music? That's another class that you do.
Well, we've done other different types of things. I've taught a class on recorder. I do drum circle, which is focusing a lot on rhythms. And we get into some spiritual things as well. It's just the whole process of playing the drums. And we've done a rhythm class. And there's a lot of different things that people can do that really allow you to have hands-on experience. I know there are piano classes. I'm not teaching them, but someone else does. And as a result, you have the opportunity to play other instruments. As far as participation, listening is a participation.
That is. Active listening makes you in there. But well, you talked about the different. There's strings, there's brass, there's reeds, there's percussion. All of this can be in orchestral. All of this can be in movie music. All of this can be in jazz or even in rock and roll, pop music or whatever. So maybe illustrate for us. You brought some wind instruments.
I did.
Tell us what that is.
This is an alto recorder. It is the second highest of the most standard ones. Mostly they are soprano, which is equivalent to the human voice, the soprano.
Very high pitched.
Quite high. There are two higher ones. There's a lot of different levels, but this is a fairly lower one. And I think when you hear it, you'll see that it doesn't have the sound that you're accustomed to hearing with a third grader playing the recorder. And hopefully it'll sound a little bit more expertise than that as well. So it can play some higher notes as well.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Was that you just improvising, or
yes.
was there a real melody that you were?
There was no melody. It was improvisation. I wanted to show you the difference between the alto that I just played and the soprano recorder. You can see that it's smaller. This is one of the things that I like to do for my classes, is to show them the soprano, the alto, a tenor, a bass. So they come in different sizes, and to really explain how it is that some instruments are higher and lower, and yet they're exactly the same in every other way. So if you hear the soprano,
So right away, that's evoking, for me anyway, a young man walking through fields of rye in Scotland or Ireland or something like that. It just brings to mind these, right? There's so many, but it could also be maybe some Native American in Poughkeepsie or something like that.
Well, I do have actual Native American. It's interesting that you noticed all of my years of playing Celtic music somehow came out in my improvisation, which is interesting. I didn't plan to do it that way, but it just turned out. And I think that that can happen when you've played a lot of certain styles. I throw jazz into things that I'm running that are really classical. So it's whatever you're accustomed to.
It was lovely.
Well, thank you. Now, this is, if you see the difference in size, this is
so
soprano
there's the
recorder.
alto you were just
playing. No, this is the soprano.
Excuse me, you're the soprano.
This is a Native American flute, and it's what they call a pocket flute, so it's the smallest one they make. I've actually spoken to the person who made this, who has a company in Arizona, and took some online lessons with him as well. Notice this little hand-carved.
Yeah, what is that? What's the purpose
wings.
of that?
They just put little things on their flutes to represent their culture.
Okay, it's decorative. It's not like a grip or
right. It has
affecting the sound of the flute or anything.
No practical use, but it's just pretty.
There you go.
This will give you a little idea of what I do with the drum circle class. When they're playing, I sometimes improvise on this flute.
Okay, so let's hear a little bit of that. Awesome.
So it gives you a different kind of feel when you listen to it. Even when you play it, it feels different to me than if I play a soprano recorder.
And this is probably more North American.
Yes.
Because like South American indigenous folks maybe do more pan flute or...
Pan flute, and also they use flutes that are more the horizontal flutes.
Okay.
I have drawers full of various folk flutes. That's a different flute. And the shakuhachi, which is a very interesting Japanese flute, is played like this.
Okay.
But the whole embouchure, the mouth position, is more like a regular flute that you blow across like a modern flute. So it's a very difficult instrument to learn to play.
Wow. Okay. But
it gives us
a different sound altogether.
It does.
The three instruments that you've played for us, each one of them, I guess we would call a woodwind.
Yes.
But they all have a different sound, a different texture to them.
Different tone color.
That's we go.
That word, tone color.
Tone color.
Even within the same family of instruments, you have varying tone colors.
So in your class, you mentioned drum circle, and you mentioned there's some spiritual aspects to this, which is not necessarily a religious thing per se.
Right.
What can somebody expect to learn or gain or feel when they're coming into one of your drum circle classes?
It's very interesting about how the drum circle class is. From one week to another, even with the same group of people, you get different energies.
Yeah.
People come in, they're tired, they've had a rough week, bad weather, they've been driving in the snow or whatever. And they may come in with a whole different personality than they had a week earlier. But we try to do a little bit of a meditation in the beginning. I actually play a meditation where they are just listening to some very calm, peaceful music in the beginning before we start.
Is this just to set a mood for us, or
yes,
to
exactly.
put you into a certain state of thinking?
They close their eyes, they listen to the meditation music, and just relax. We talk about breathing. This is all part of the whole experience. Anyone can just sit down and play a drum, but I try to get them into a better state of mind when they come out of that class than when they entered it. So that is part of the experience.
So could we say the drum circle is a little bit of catharsis?
I would say that it can be.
You
yes.
can take it there. You could
Sure.
Sometimes it's just a little bit of getting rid of the frustration.
It can be that too. And it's also, I do talk to them. I teach them some basics of rhythms. We talk about different meters, which is like 3/4 and 4/4 and 2/4, where the way music is organized.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not fractions. That's
right. It's not fractions.
That's counting. That's counting. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you. You strike me as the kind of person who has a sensitivity to music and the emotion behind the music. And I really hope your students are getting those things from you when they're attending your class. Thanks so much for being with us
Oh, you're
today.
very welcome. Thanks. So good to be here.